At the moment, I'm working for Sony in their PlayStation division. You guys have learned quite a bit. Even though I would know about every bit of them, a little bit about all of them, my main area of focus is the development side of things. So I'm very sort of closely involved with the actual development of the systems and testing and delivering them to the business. I've done a variety of projects in the past, but the one that I'm working on now for Sony is to sort of manage their PlayStation network from a sort of a back-end perspective. How many of you have got PlayStation 3s? Hey, I like you guys. Right. The PlayStation network, it's got all sorts of products available online that you can purchase and stuff. I don't develop any of the games, but I develop the software that manages those games in terms of pricing, availability, how we get the games to the market and things like that. So that's the system I develop. It's a very sort of very proprietary, custom-built solution for Sony because there are not many other companies in the world who do similar things. It's literally Sony, Microsoft Xbox, and Nintendo, and a couple of other guys. So it's a very sort of custom-built solution for them. Whereas you could come across ICT systems which are based on like pre-built solutions. Like if you think of accounting, for example, every business has got to do accounting. So something like that, you could purchase the software off the shelf, and that's something that you wouldn't develop in-house. You would then simply customize it for the business. Whereas in this particular case, it's a very custom-built, like specific for Sony and PlayStation, which is very interesting work for me. So that's my background. I can tell you more about it based on your question.
Sure. When Winston mentions Sony PlayStation Network, what's the first thing that we think of as a club?
It failed. It failed.
We've done a lot of case study work on the failure. So, Anika, any questions? I know you're a keen gamer.
Yeah, that was really painful. those
Not my fault. That was before I joined Sony. But yes, that's part and parcel of working in the information technology department. Like when I joined Sony, the whole company was shaken up. There were people running around like mad trying to sort out things, and then they reviewed their policies and how they want to enforce the security policy, how they allow the different development teams to promote software to the PlayStation network and so on. And supposedly it's all watertight now, so fingers crossed.
You say that they reviewed the security policy. Did PlayStation security, did that become part of perhaps the company's strategy? So actually they felt that security was much more important than they first perceived? That's
a very accurate way of putting it. Security is always part of any ICT strategy. All companies have a security policy. But what tends to happen is strategies and policies that are not profit-making generally tend to get pushed down the priority order. And even though the IT guys at the very lowest level who are developing the software and deploying them and so on, they know what's going on, and they would probably know what is best in terms of security. But when their concerns usually get pushed down, like they wanted to upgrade the operating systems. Like some of the operating systems have been out of support. Like when I say out of support, the people who originally built the software do not offer any support. It's that sort of stuff. So they reviewed things like that. Though the hack itself had got nothing to do with that operating system or that system, as part of the security policy review, they upgraded everything. And Michael is right. After that incident, now security is like one of their top priorities. So they have a most strict security policy. So you can't promote things to production. As in, like, when I say production, it means things that the public can see.
Yeah.
That easily anymore.
So you say about policy had to change. Policy sort of one thing that a company or organisation would follow, isn't it? What about the procedures? How were you affected by procedures? So what did you have to ensure that you were doing as part of your day-to-day routine? Did that change?
Well, for me, I learned the new bits, so I didn't know what they used to do in the past. But how it has affected my team is we work on certain technologies and we rely on certain software from Oracle, for example. We rely on a lot of software, but one of them is Oracle. And those software bits had to be upgraded to the latest version. So as I joined that team, they were upgrading the versions to whatever the latest versions were. That's one thing. And the other thing is, procedure is a good point. There are different ways the environments are controlled. Like, when we develop something, we do it in a certain infrastructure, and once it is developed and tested, it moves to the actual production infrastructure. And that procedure has been sort of, I only learned the new system, so I do not know what exactly they had in the past, but apparently that has been changed as well.
So procedures could include upgrading software as part of your practice, to make sure that...
That's more of a strategical thing.
Yeah, all right.
The procedure would be things like you cannot go into production unless it has been tested and signed off for these security measures by whichever department that's responsible for it. Like some of the testing that you could do is specific to security would be penetration testing, for example. So you literally sort of run software which will try and penetrate your software, like without having the right access details.
Yeah.
So that's a thing.
All right. Has anyone got any sort of questions before we start to move into specific areas and start to take a look at our notes and stuff? Has anyone got any general questions at the moment?
I was just going to say, you said that the software was getting updated when you started. So how were you trained to learn with the software?
It's with software and IT industry, things are always moving. Like every couple of months, vendors are releasing new versions and so on. In our case, our team, we are full of developers. We generally get to train on the job, like we learn things as we go along. We don't have any sort of formal training, even though on occasions, for something like this we wouldn't get formal training. But say if we moved from using Oracle software to IBM software, that's a bit of a jump. So in that case, some people would be sent off on courses on site with IBM or something to learn their software. But your question is definitely more relevant to business users who use our software, like the one that we develop in-house, and then they are using it. They definitely need to be trained. And what typically happens is, as we develop the software, there is a different team, who are generally called the business analysts, who would document how the systems work, and they would be responsible for training the business users within Sony. And if we release a major upgrade of our in-house solution, those guys would get trained maybe over a few meetings or discussions. If somebody is new, actually, I got trained in their software, like as in the one that they had built when I joined Sony over a period of a couple of months. We had different training sessions.
So you had to go through sort of initial training or induction training?
There is an induction program that I had to go through, and on top of that, once the induction was finished, and as I started working with different systems, then I had to go through training on those systems. Just to understand how those systems are being used by the business users, even though I won't be using those systems, to understand how those systems are being used, so then I can develop the right solution for them.
Do you remember we looked briefly at Eurotrade's pre-release, and we were saying about how they've got customers that use their systems. I think that's what you're saying, Winston, isn't it? When you've got other businesses using your systems, they might need to be trained.
That's right. In our case, all our customers are Sony employees.
Yeah, right.
They are the ones who use the solution that we build, but that's specific to my team. Of course, there's another team who work on the PlayStation.com website, so their customers would be like all of us.
And what support is there for just customers of PlayStation.com, for example? What sort of ways do they support their users and customers?
I do not know exactly how their team is structured, but typically what happens is you have multiple levels of support. So there will be like first line, second line, third line, and fourth line. Like the job that I do, where I develop these systems, I would be like the fourth line support. Like
Yeah.
no customer would ever contact me directly. There would usually be a help desk who would be the first line support, so you could just call them or email them. They would pick up the call, and there are a lot of times, people would query like really simple things like, I lost my password, or I couldn't access this, and those sort of things they can answer directly because those guys would be very trained with the system itself and how to use it. But if there was a problem in the site, then they would escalate it to the next level of support, who would be trained in certain areas. Like for example, a server might be down, and that's the reason you couldn't access your specific information. So somebody would be able to look at it and fix that problem for you. They could just reboot the server or find out what's wrong with the server. And then there's another level of support where, okay, the server is fine, the software is running, but we've still got a problem. Now we need to contact the team who actually wrote this software,
Right.
that sort of a thing. So then it gets escalated to the next level and so on. Different organizations have different levels of support,
Right.
but usually it gets layered like this, so it's sort of more cost effective for them.
If I give the guys a couple of minutes to perhaps brainstorm on particular areas, then we could come back to you about different questions. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Could you lot take a look? Perhaps we'll finish on future developments and ask Winston some of his opinions and thoughts and experiences of working with those. Could you lot perhaps take a look though at those areas, so strategy, policy and legislation. Just take a look at those chapters and the bits that we've done on that. Have a quick chat and a brainstorm about different areas in terms of strategy, policies, legislation. What affects ICT strategy? Yeah, how is your working life affected by legislation? Have a bit of a brainstorm, and then we'll come back to you in a couple of minutes.
That's perfect.